joined tonight. Sorry about the lack of air conditioning, but we are awaiting a part. So, of course, this is the perfect night to have the most people here. Obviously, most people are probably here for the 7:15 meeting with the Lunenburg Water District, but we do have some other business to attend to before we get to that. The first thing is I'll ask anybody from the board. Well, the first thing I want to say is congratulations to Mrs. Bertram on her re-election.
Thank you very much.
And congratulations to everybody else who won elections on Saturday. I just want to point out, in my continuing trend, as it seems, that out of 67, I'm guessing, 6,700 registered voters, a total of 247 people voted. So basically, we have half the attendance here today than voted on Saturday. And I would laugh along with you if I thought that was even funnier than it really is. But anyway, congratulations to everybody who did win seats. We'll, the town clerk now, because there was a lot of write-ins, took some time to contact people who were write-ins to let them know if they wanted to accept. So that's why they were not posted, and I think they are now official, correct? They are official now? We're not sure, but the town clerk is finalizing that because everybody has to be notified before they all can go out. Any public comment from the board this evening? Any public comment from the public on something other than the meeting in 10, 15 minutes? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't know if you were going to do any announcements. I just want to take the opportunity to remind folks that there's a Memorial Day program this coming Monday at 11 a.m. at the Memorial Park across from the Eagle House Senior Center, followed by coffee, etc. at the Eagle House.
Again, it's Monday this year. It usually has been traditionally on Sunday, so I just wanted people to know the day change. So it actually is happening on Memorial Day this year. And I want to thank Mr. Toll for organizing that with the people at the Eagle House and the Veterans Association. So the first thing we have is board reorganization, of course, and board liaison assignments. As is customary after an election, the board renominates or nominates people for the officers of chair, vice chair, and clerk, and then we will discuss liaison appointments this evening as well. So that being said, I would entertain motions for the position of chairperson.
Mr. Chairman,
Mrs. Bertram.
I would like to start off by noting your commitment to this board for the last couple of years. I think you've done a phenomenal job as chair, and I thank you for your service. Personally, I think it's healthy for the chair to change periodically, and therefore I would nominate Jamie Toll for chair.
Second.
Any other nominations for chair? All those in favor of Mr. Toll, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. So we will now switch chairs, and he will run the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
That was a very smooth exit, Mr. Alonso. I'd like to entertain nominations for the position of vice chair of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank Paula for her hard work as vice chair over these past few years, and I would like to nominate Mr. Bob Eversole.
Second.
Any discussion? Any other nominations? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And we will switch chairs.
And finally, I'd like to entertain nominations for clerk.
I would like to nominate Mr. Alonso for clerk.
Do I hear a second? Any discussion? Any other nominations? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
We did that
Okay.
just so I didn't have to move again, right?
Pass that to Bob.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we still have time. We want to do,
Thank you. Where's Officer James?
okay.
Now we're who we are.
This is,
The test.
Okay,
that's the inebriation requirement for the evening.
so continuing with the reorganization of the board, could we have a test on the mic? Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Bob Sire would like to recommend that all of you move the mics a little closer to you, so you get better broadcast.
Okay. All righty, fine. We're going to continue the organization discussion and talk about liaison assignments. Is the two that we have discussed in the past, the two boards that do not currently have liaisons that may in fact be a good idea for us to think about. One is the Conservation Commission, and the other was the
Zoning board.
CBA.
CBA.
Yeah.
Do I have any volunteers or discussion about those positions?
I guess one thing I would want to know is should the person be able to attend the meetings? The only reason I wouldn't put my name forward for Concom is that it's the exact same night as the school committee, and I plan to continue with the school committee. So, if
I think the objective is to attend as many as you can. I mean, I don't think it's required that you attend every meeting, but
I would be willing to do conservation. There may be a rare meeting that I miss because of another conflict with another board that I'm on, not affiliated with the town, but I think that I can make the majority of the meetings.
okay.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Thank
we're
you.
still here.
Still having trouble hearing. In the control room, can we get the volume in the hall here? Is that better? Thank you very much. So, Mrs. Bertram, you'd like to do the liaison for conservation? Mm-hmm. Fine, I don't think we need a vote on that, right?
Well,
No.
unless there's someone else that's interested.
Yeah, is anybody else
Okay.
dying to be part of that? Okay, fine.
Because if so, I'll step aside.
The other one I probably should put on the table is with my brand-new assignment. I think that perhaps the Finance Committee liaison that I currently hold might be better served by somebody else. I know that you've always had an
Yeah,
interest.
I'll go back to the FinCom, sure.
Okay, great. Anybody else interested in that? Fine, then Mr. Alonso will do that. And for the moment, I'd prefer to stay with capital planning and building reuse because we have some momentum going there, and unless somebody objects to that, I'd like to
No,
continue to do that.
I would like to stay with planning, and I believe I'm still an elected member of the MPO, so.
and I'd like to continue on the board.
Okay.
I'd be sure to ask if anybody wants to give away anything.
Yeah, does anybody want to? Does
fine with
anybody want to
mine.
give anything away?
Fine with school
Okay, so
building.
we're pretty
So just
set where we are.
Just ZBA then, right?
Okay, anybody have an interest in being the official liaison to ZBA?
I have interest, but no time.
Okay, when do they meet?
Wednesdays.
Wednesdays.
Wednesdays, okay. Why
Wednesdays
don't-
as needed.
Okay.
Right.
So why don't we hold that and give some thought to it, and I'll continue to encourage us to rethink our calendars and see if we can do that. Okay, we still have 5 minutes before the appointed appointment, so let's do warrants here. Okay, accounts payable in the amount of $185,478.34. School construction, $2,864,354.79. Payroll, $682,827.13. And payroll deduction, $145,061.84. You have any minutes? No minutes. Okay, are there any action file issues? Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to suggest that it's going to take us about 5 minutes to move down to our seats. And I assume that the Water District commissioners are here, and I invite them to kind of come in and get settled as well. So we'll be about 5 minutes till we're all set up.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
instead of us bringing these down because it's going to be
Yeah.
close, I suggested to.
Okay, I heard the suggestion. Here's what we're going to ask. If we could borrow 5 of these seats and ask 5 of these people to come up and use our seats, it would be helpful for us to join that.
Selectmen for a day.
How are we doing on sound here? Test, 1, 2. Are these mics on? Can you hear in the room, in the hall here? Yes. Okay, great. Everybody ready?
Ready.
Okay. I welcome the Lunenburg Water District commissioners, and I thank them very much for agreeing to come and sit with us and tell us what's going on. I would invite them to introduce themselves.
Sure. Let me take a moment, Mr. Chairman, and introduce our superintendent. This is Fran McNamara to my left. To my right is Richard Larkin, who is our attorney. And for those of you that are old timers in town, Richard's dad, Bob Larkin, was the town council for the town as well as the water district. So he comes with a great deal of history, and his dad was quite a jurist, and he's been great with us as well. To his right is Mark, and to his right is John Esposito and Bursch. I'm sorry, last names. Okay, and my name is Dave Rogers, and I'm the chairman. Mr. Chairman, what I thought we might do would be to take it from the beginning, so-called, and we could explain what brings us here this evening. And you folks have submitted to us some questions which we've responded. I hope you have a copy of that. We can, after we go through this, if there are any open issues, I'd be happy to entertain those questions so that we can hopefully answer any questions. With that in mind, I thought it would be appropriate to have our superintendent, Fran McNamara, explain how we were contacted and what transpired. So this is going to be a very logical progression type of a situation. So, Fran, I can't move that down, but you can use that.
Okay.
This thing right here?
Okay. No.
How about this one?
Okay, this one's working.
Good.
All right. Lancaster had called, just questioning, just general questions if we would consider the option of expanding or selling water to the town of Lancaster. So what we did is we set up a commissioners meeting. The Lancaster officials came in, presented multiple options for different quantities of water they were looking for. Some of it, which at the beginning phases no one was really aware, but some of it was already inside the Shirley Water District. So some of the initial discussions weren't accurate. So as time went on, we started discussing the quantity of waters they were looking for. They sent out their projected build out, which I believe everybody has, which we submitted. And to all of us, myself and the board, it seemed like the numbers that they were requesting were very doable on our part. We didn't have any concerns with the amount of water they were asking for.
Let me interrupt for a second there, Fran. Why don't you walk through and tell about the wells that we have and their capacities and that sort of thing.
Okay, so currently we have the main source for this particular project would be the Keating well, which has a permitted capacity of 1.44 million gallons per day. This particular well was recently put online. Testing was done in 2009 for that well to be permitted through DEP for a public water supply. Prior to that time, the well, I'll back up a little bit. The well was found in 1975 by the Water District in our studies looking for sources of water. Due to its location of more than 4 miles away from a water system, it was just financially, we weren't capable of putting in a water supply at that time. Keating's is a very high volume water user. So what they did is they put in their well at the location that we had found. So over the years of kind of investigating, I kept an eye on this well. I kept track of what it could do, its water quality and everything like that. And then when the time came possible for us to actually be able to afford to put that well in, we pursued it. So the well was online for Keating, and it pumped the same capacity as what we're permitted for, 1,000 gallons a minute, 1.44 million gallons per day. And it was online for Keating's for 22 years. It was, 87 they put it in. We took it over in 2009. And outside of that well, we have actually 5 wells on Lancaster Ave. One is inactive. Those wells, some of them were put in, first one was put in 61, 2 of them put in 1963, which one of those is inactive. Another one was put in 1978, and the newest one in that area is 1985. And then besides those, we have the Hickory Hills well, which is, as of actually this January, became inactive because of high levels of manganese, which is pretty much just a Massachusetts code. Massachusetts doesn't want levels of manganese of higher than 0.3. And this particular well, actually right now it has 0, but if you ran it for any amount of time, it goes up elevated to probably 0.7. We've seen as high as 1.0 milligrams per liter of manganese. So it was just, we always had to run it just to keep taking samples to keep it active, and it wasn't really a viable option to turn it on. So we just put it to the inactive mode so we can just let it stand by. And the downside of that is we cannot turn it on unless we get specific permission from DEP to activate it.
Just so that everybody understands, DEP is the Department of Environmental Protection. They are the gurus of water. Fran, tell the folks, if you would, what the capacity of that Hickory Hills well is.
Okay, the capacity is 720,000 gallons per day, 500 gallons a minute.
Okay, so in the aggregate, we have between the wells on Lancaster Avenue and the Keating well, so-called, we have a capacity for 2.5 million gallons.
Correct.
A day, right? let's talk a bit about what we use on an average and also what the peak time is, peak usage is for the wells right now.
Okay. Reviewing the current, usually, as you would expect, summertime is the highest use periods. Over the last few years, the typical high average use per month is 600,000 gallons per day. That is the average. On several occasions, we've hit a max day of 1 million gallons a day. It's a touch over 1 million. It's like 1,050,000. So that is a typical. On the wintertime, the typical average is around 350,000 gallons per day. It fluctuates 320 to 380, but on average it's about 350. So the key number with that 350, I know a lot of people keep discussing, throwing out there the droughts and all that. I mean, I haven't heard of a drought since I believe it was the 60s. But that key number is if there were a drought and mandatory, very strict water restrictions were in place, that 350,000 is what we would anticipate to be the demand, no matter what time of the year it is, because that's just general use, showers and toilet use. So that really indicates if some critical drought did happen, which it is possible, and we need to be prepared for it. I don't think it is any issues with meeting that 350,000 on a daily basis.
In that regard, Fran, let's also talk about the storage capacity that we have, because we have two storage tanks, one on Sunny Hill Road and the other on Pope Road, and I bet there aren't 6 people in this room that know where Pope Road is, but it's right off of Route 13, diagonally across from the Gulf Station and up the hill. That's Pope Road. What's the other name for that?
Chase Road.
Chase Road is the main road, but isn't
Pope Road.
there another name for
Right
it?
crosses the road on the other side of Northfield Road.
No.
Stagecoach.
Stagecoach.
See, Bob's been here for 150 years.
That's
In fact, that was the old place, old way to Ashby, right?
Right.
Right. Okay. So we have two storage tanks, one there and one on Sunny Hill Road. And let's talk about the storage capacity that we have.
Okay, the one on Pope Road, Chase Road, is 2.8 million gallons, and the one on Sunny Hill Road is 500,000 gallons, which is a elevated tank. By being elevated, it raises all the water to the actual usable area. So even though it's significantly smaller in size, the amount of water actually in the usable section is actually it's only half in size if you compare the actual usable water.
Okay. So if you take a reasonable number that we could allocate to the usage within the town of Lunenburg, what, in your professional opinion, would that number be?
I didn't understand the question.
Okay. I want to give these folks an idea of what a good average number would be. Not a high number, but a low number, balanced out, realizing that in the wintertime it's lower, the summertime it's a little bit bigger, and we also have peaks.
Right. So the average for the year for the water district. So
Yeah.
The average is 450,000 gallons per day. Our permit for withdrawals through DEP is 540,000 gallons per day. And that the withdrawals that DEP gives for us permission to draw is not tied to our ability to pump water. It's tied to population. They review our population, the build out of what we currently have, and they estimate what we should be using for water. And the reason they do that is mostly for conservation purposes. If they said we could pump 1 million gallons a day, then we would have no reason to do any kind of conservation. So it's just a accounting kind of thing, a little control of our usage to make sure that we're...
So on average, 440 is
Right.
the number, and the number that Lancaster has requested is 250.
That is correct.
So in the aggregate, we're talking 690,000 gallons per day.
Correct.
Okay. But realizing that we do have peaks, for July and August, it could go up over a million gallons a day.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So if we use this number and we have the capacity for 2.5 million, that leaves, 1.8, almost 1.9 million gallons difference.
Right.
So the point is that when we went through this scenario, we wanted to make sure that we had enough capacity to serve Lancaster if needed. So preliminarily, just so that everybody knows, there's all kinds of emails flipping around, and I want to set this record straight. We do not have an agreement with the town of Lancaster. Okay? When I appeared before you ages ago, I talked about the infancy of this and how it had just begun, and that's where we are. There is all kinds of work to be done to go forward. And one of the things that we talked about with the good folks from Lancaster was our unwillingness to spend any money on this project. And I've been quoted ad nauseum about the fact that our position was that we didn't want to spend a nickel on this because we just didn't think that it was right. So the other thing that comes into play, and I'll let Fran speak about this, is the possibility of some additional wells and storage on the Lancaster side.
Okay, so we have the main feed for this Lancaster project is the new water line that was installed on Reservoir Road and Leominster Shirley Road. So the intention would be Lancaster would connect to this line, run down Leominster Shirley Road, then down Fort Pond Road. The big concern on our part, the Water District part, is redundancy. So our requirement with Lancaster was that they would have to put a storage tank in Lancaster. So that way, if we had a broken main or something in Lunenburg, that we could still have water backfed from Lancaster back into Lunenburg and from the other side of Lunenburg back to it. Because it's not appropriate design to have the ability to close one valve and we could close off 1/3 of Lunenburg and all of Lancaster. So we were asking for a storage tank just for redundancy. And along with the storage tank, Lunenburg's pressures are way too high to transfer to Lancaster, so we would have a valving station. And what would happen is when a tank calls for water, it would talk through usually radio waves, and it would tell that valve to open up and feed water from Lunenburg into that area. On an additional part of this was the hydrogeologist had pointed out possibly 4 wells, not high capacity wells like the Keating well, which is extremely rare to find. Moderate capacity, possibly moderate capacity wells. And the town of Lancaster actually called me yesterday, and they were mentioning that there's possibly another well. So there are 5 potential sources of water in Lancaster that could possibly either supply this whole project or assist us in this whole project. And if it can supply the whole project, then Lunenburg will just be a backup source for that town.
Okay, let's talk for a minute about why this whole discussion took place. Specifically, I want the folks to know that the Lancaster water system is way the heck on the other side of town, right?
Correct. The current Lancaster system is exactly as Dave said. It's many miles away, and it's not just the distance. Apparently, their storage tanks are not adequate in height to supply the required pressure to feed this project. Because the tanks would have to be replaced, that puts now the replacement of all the wells, all the pumps. So on Lancaster side, it was not feasible for them to pretty much redo their whole water system to supply this project. So they looked at every surrounding community in that area. They looked at the Shirley Water District, the city of Leominster, and upon those falling through for ability of connecting to them, they came to Lunenburg. Currently, Shirley is doing a pump test on a well. It's probably, I'm not quite sure, I never really measured it, but it's probably 800 feet, 1,000 feet to the south of the Keating well. So it's pretty much in the same aquifer that we currently are using now. The reason why Shirley can't provide service to Lancaster, because Lancaster's ready to go now. Apparently the build out, the developers are ready to go as soon as the source of water is available. In our case, like the Keating well, we started the process in 2004. It was 2011 by the time we actually got the well online. So it takes a long time for a well to go through the whole permitting process. In case with Shirley, they're doing the pump test actually starting June 1st. And on that case, that's where they do a proposal to DEP. DEP reviews all the information, how they're going to do the test, and then they do their very high stress test, 15 days. They pump that well at max capacity to check the water levels of the area. And after that, then it takes probably a year to get your permit from DEP. By the time you actually build the thing, it's engineer it. It's many years down the road that the Lancaster did not want to wait. And no one even knows if it's going to pass the pump test. So not all wells pass pump tests.
Let's talk for a couple of minutes about how this annexation took place. And by that I mean how we, the commissioners, voted to expand the boundaries of the Lunenburg Water District into Lancaster. It was relatively close to our annual meeting, and we wanted to make sure that the good people in Lancaster knew that we were negotiating on a very preliminary basis with good faith. So we asked our counsel, Richard Larkin, to put together the boundaries, so-called, for this annexation. And in addition, Fran looked at it, and we came up with the boundaries, so-called, and that's what we voted on at our meeting. Now, a lot of people have been very vocal about the fact that they didn't know about the meeting and et cetera. I've been a water commissioner for 40 years. And if there is a problem with that, then I take full responsibility. But I will tell you that this is the way it has been done for the 40 years that I've been a water commissioner. We put the announcement in the Fitchburg Sentinel, and we run it for the days that we're supposed to, and we post it throughout the town where we're supposed to. And the reason that we didn't post it with the Lunenburg Ledger was a time issue. Frankly, we were waiting to get the final boundaries from Richard, and that's how it happened. It went to the Fitchburg Sentinel. So that's the chronological order of how things happened. One of the other issues that I think is important for the good folks here and in the town to know, and that is that currently we have a few intermunicipal agreements in place, in full force and effect. I speak of a sewer agreement with the city of Leominster and the city of Fitchburg. We have mutual aid agreements with surrounding cities and towns relative to police and to fire. So this is not an uncommon kind of an occurrence in the New England area. In addition, many years ago, when Ed King was the governor of Massachusetts, we petitioned the legislature for permission to tie into, on an as-needed basis, with the city of Fitchburg and to buy water from the city of Fitchburg. And we have that document at the credit union. So frankly, what we tried to do, what we always try to do, is to have a backup plan so that we can do what we have to do on a continuous basis. Now, what's in it for the people in the Lunenburg Water District? Because frankly, if there is no benefit to it, why the hell are we doing it? I'll tell you. It's anticipated that the proceeds that we would receive from Lancaster, and quite frankly, we don't know what those proceeds would be because we don't know what the flows would be, how many people are going to tie on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I can't give you a number, but it's anticipated that the proceeds for this endeavor would be used to maintain existing infrastructure that we have in place in Lunenburg. Obviously, we would have to pay costs for electricity. We would want to put money away for reserves. And in addition, we would want to take care of hopefully, and this is not a guarantee, but hopefully this is what we would like to do, is to effect a reduction in what we charge the folks for water. Okay? But I really can't tell you what that would be because I have no numbers to go by. But that's the intent of this whole exercise. Okay? What have I missed in terms of a chronological kind of a explanation? Oh, I know. Some very important things, and I rely on you to talk about this. It's been bandied about that the this proposal, if it comes to fruition, would have an adverse effect on Lake Shirley.
Right, we've heard several. I think all those have been kind of put aside, and I think enough people have actually seen the true actual maps that wouldn't happen. I've actually, when we did do the pump test on a new source, the DEP requires specific high-stress testing on the well. And when this testing is done, and this is the same kind of testing that the Shirley Water District is going to do, they put out continuous water level logging equipment out in the gravel areas and in the wetlands areas. And during this high-stress pump test, they monitor all the water levels, and everything has to stabilize over the course of a 24-hour period. So it is clearly everything is stationary upon the. So whatever's coming out is equal to what's going in. So upon the retrieval of all this data, it's all computer modeled, and all this is coordinated with the hydrogeologist. In our case, it was Stantec Engineering who was the engineer, and their hydrogeologist recorded all the data, computer modeled it in conjunction with discussions with DEP, and they coordinate and confirm the recharge area, which is the actual map that is adopted by the town zoning for protection area. And in that map, it shows, I think everybody's getting a handle of our distribution system. You can see the little cone at the bottom south corner of on the map. That is the actual recharge area for the Keating well. So as you can see, it actually is coming from the direction of Lancaster. Actually, part of it actually extends into Lancaster.
So basically, in layman's terms, that means that the recharge area is that which recharges the well. So we would be selling Lancaster's water back to them, because that's where it's coming from, the recharge area. Okay? It's got nothing to do with Lake Shirley or anything like that. So I think that's an important consideration. What else?
Well, the water that would go to Lancaster would then recharge into the aquifer, which feeds the well.
Right.
Right, some of it will. Some
Some
of
of it will,
Right.
yeah. Come back.
No.
No. And that's another thing that we wanted to bring up real quickly, that I guess it was about 10 years ago when we were talking about sewerage in Lunenburg. And there was a whole group of people that felt that if we had sewerage, it wouldn't recharge back into the systems, so-called, would be shipping it out, and that there would be an adverse effect on water and the ability to pump water in Lunenburg. Well, the Lunenburg Water District hired our two engineers to do a study, as well as a fellow from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And his name was?
Peter Shanahan.
Shannon. And I think I'm right when I say this, that he worked in conjunction with the folks at at Hickory Hills on some projects.
That's correct.
Okay, so that cost us $25,000, and we paid for it, the Lunenburg Water District, and it came out conclusively, the way that our engineers told us it would, that there would be no adverse effect on the water within the town of Lunenburg. And the largest loss of water from Hickory Hills would be from regular evaporation. So the point I'm trying to make here is that we try, and frankly, we've been very successful, to protect the resources of the town and to make sure that the good people in the town of Lunenburg are afforded the opportunity for quality water on a continuous basis. And that's why we've undertaken such an extensive program to look for additional well sites over the years. As I said, I've been a commissioner for 40 years, and we've constantly been looking for new well sites. And believe it or not, we've been criticized by some that we didn't need the well at Keating's. Well, I guess everybody is entitled to their own opinion, but we felt, and thank God that we did, that it was great for us to go out and have a redundant source. So it's all proven to be very successful. Mark, do you have anything to add to this?
Only believing that, I think we went to the Keating source because of the cost to treat the Hickory Hills source. That's pretty well correct.
Right. We looked at three options. We did purchase water from Fitchburg, the treatment of the Hickory Hills well, or the installation of the Keating well. The Hickory Hills well and the installation of Keating's were pretty similar in price, the initial cost, but to do a treatment plant would require long-term, even maintenance, labor cost. So we looked towards the Keating's well because the water is so good that it didn't need any kind of treatment. The other option was the Fitchburg, and if we bought water from Fitchburg, even a third, well, not even a third, even a quarter of what we can produce from the Keating well, the cost that we would have to pay Fitchburg was like 3 times what our loan payment is now to go through the loan process of putting in the actual well. And then seeing all the increases in the sewer rates, which Lunenburg has no control. Fitchburg raises them, you're stuck with it. That kind of played into our thoughts of what we would have no control of our future expenses down the road. So if we put on our own well, it was expensive, but we thought in the best outlook for the future was the best option. When we were looking for wells, really it was more of our goal was to something in the area of the size of the well at Hickory Hills. So we were looking for something in the 300 to 500 gallon a minute range. The Keating well, we have a permit for 1,000. Our thought process was it's there. We might as well go for the max permit because in 20 years, who knows what it's going to be. I mean, it's going to be so difficult to get permits in the future. So we figured we'd go for the maximum. This actual well, luckily, we received some stimulus money. So our time allowable to actually do this project was squeezed significantly. So we could not go through certain processes if we went past that 1,000 gallons a minute. If we went past that 1,000 gallons a minute, we'd have to go through the whole MEPA process. That would have taken 2 years. And by doing that, we would have lost the stimulus money. And in our opinion, 500 gallons a minute was enough for Lunenburg. So the 1,000 was twice what we would ever need. So we thought we were good forever with just that extra amount. So the point of all that is that well is capable of more than what actually we're pulling from it.
I'd like to touch briefly on economic development because there's been some talk and some emails about the fact that, well, why doesn't the Lunenburg Water District pay attention to economic development in the town? Okay. Nobody has come to us and said, we have this development that we need water for. Okay. Some people have said, well, when we put the addition, put the new buildings down at the highway department, how come we didn't have water down there? Well, we looked at supplying water, and it was deemed by those that were in charge that it was not cost-effective, and I agree with that. So they got a waiver, and they did it another way. We are ready, willing, and able to assist any way we can with the betterment process as it pertains to economic development. Which leads me to the next point about the economic development in Lancaster. This, if it all comes to fruition, will be a significant contribution to central Massachusetts. And although it's not specifically in the town of Lunenburg, there are spillover, no pun intended, benefits for the area towns. And everybody and their brother is saying we need economic development. Well, this would be a significant contribution in terms of economic development for the construction that they're talking about in this area. And it would mean jobs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So from our standpoint, we tried to look at this at every angle, and it made good common sense to us. Again, we have 2.5 million gallons a day, and we have nowhere near that usage. We have plenty of water to supply Lancaster. And some people have said, well, is this an open kind of a situation? And the answer is no, absolutely not. We're not giving them carte blanche to use whatever they want. It's 250,000 gallons if we're able to put this together. And when we hit that, that's it. And hopefully we can do other things to assist them and basically be their water department and make it a win-win situation. So I hope that we've covered that chronologically. And Mark?
I have something else.
Of course, sure.
Fran, can we just talk about the putting in the Keating well and the how we power the wells and the demand charges and how that relates to those wells?
Okay, the way the electric meter, Unitil, we have an on-off peak meter. At 10 o'clock at night, we don't incur any kind of demand charges. The demand charges, they cost a lot of money. I don't know if anybody's ever been anywhere with a high horsepower motor. If, like Lancaster Ave, we went down and turned all the wells on, we're looking at probably $1,100 to $1,200 bill just for that month, just for turning them on, not even pumping any water, just to start those pumps up. So luckily, Unitil has a different kind of metering program that we are allowed to use. And in this case, luckily too, it just changed recently. It used to be at 10 o'clock at night. It would switch to off-peak to 7 o'clock in the morning. I think it was about 3 or 4 months ago, it switched to 10 o'clock at night to 10 o'clock in the morning. So it actually gave us 3 more hours of pumping. So what we do is we focus all our pumping during that period. And then we offset that as a needed basis on the on-peak time. So if we only turned on one pump, we get the demand charge is small. It's like around $300 to $400. So we'll run one pump during the day, but our goal is we maximize our pumping at night. So like any night you pick 11 o'clock at night, all our pumps are running, tanks are filling, and then in the morning is usually in the mornings when all the sprinklers turn on and you can actually watch the tanks drop. But
So without Keatings, we incurred demand charges on a regular basis.
Yes, actually, with the Keating well, yes, we actually don't need to run any of the wells in Lancaster Ave during the day at all. Our capacity is it's huge. I mean, Keating can pump more water than all of Lancaster altogether. So it really, on the financial side, it really was a huge benefit.
Not to mention the 3.3 million gallons that we have in storage.
Right. Which a lot of times, well, before the Keating well, when we had just the Lancaster, a lot of times the peak demand of what people are using is actually exceeding what the wells can pump. And that's where the storage tanks come in. It's mostly, it's for the demand periods that we can't meet and the fire protection. And that's why the engine is sized, the tanks, to a size that is capable of meeting all your future needs as needed.
I'd like to make a couple of quick points, and that is, and I'm going to toot our horn a bit okay? Because we pride ourselves in being a good corporate citizen. We truly do. We have towers that we rent out to various telecommunications companies. And we have made room for the town of Lunenburg Police and Fire on 3 of our towers that we have. And I don't want you to think that it's just one way, because it isn't. The police are constantly on the road, and they've helped us on numerous times to report to us that there's a break when they see water. So it's a situation that has helped. When we were doing things telecommunication-wise here at the town hall, there were some financial constraints that we stepped in and when we took care of. Nobody knows about it. We just did it, and that's the way it should be. I think if you check with the fire department and the police department and the DPW, you'll find that we bend over backwards to help, and we've done that constantly, and we'll continue to do that, because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to help one another. So, John, have I forgotten anything?
No, you did a pretty good job. There's a couple things I'd like to just repeat, because I think they're very important. The first one is that the water that we're pumping out of that well comes from Lancaster, doesn't come from Shirley Reservoir. The second thing is Keating used that well in their business down there for 22 years, and they use more water out of that well to wash their stone, wash their product, than we're taking out of it now, and it hasn't been an adverse effect in 22 years. The other thing is that this project, if it goes through, like Dave said, it's not going to cost the water district 1 cent. We made that very clear at our meeting. The other thing is that we have more than enough water to supply Lancaster and supply all the takers in town, and we've got enough water to add on new projects if they come about. And the water district is always looking for new well sites, always. There isn't a day that goes by, I don't think, that Fran talks about looking for a new well site, and we're trying to find those. And if Lancaster comes to us after this project is done and decided that they wanted to add on some other buildings, we would have to check to make sure that we had the water to supply them extra buildings, but if we didn't, we wouldn't do it. The Lunenburg water takers come first. And I think it's a very good project, and I think it's a shame that the town of Lunenburg couldn't do something like it. If we could get some property somewhere in town and put up one of these projects, it would be very beneficial, I think, to the town, but I don't see anything in the future.
We have anything else, Fran?
Just to add on to John's comments about doing a good service for the water takers. We've shown we have the capacity. We've talked about some of the things that we do to save money. Obviously, costs are not going to go down for water takers. It's going to constantly increase. We are looking at possibly being able to curb those increases or even reduce those increases. And it'd be a disservice to the water takers and the members of the water district if we didn't explore the option of this project.
I forgot to mention one thing, and I promise you this is the last. We have a great staff of employees, Jimmy Moisen and Austin Flagg, and Jeff Bingham, and Margaret Pothier, who's our clerk treasurer. Austin Flagg is a call fireman. Am I correct? And has been the recipient of a couple of awards for his services. And the arrangement that we have is that when the tones go off, he can go. So it's like having a full-time firefighter on the town, ready to go anytime, and doesn't cost the town a nickel. So it was one more thing that we pride ourselves in contributing. And I don't want minimize the fact that the town has been good to us as well. So with that.
Thank you. I'd like to open it up to the board for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for the overview. I do have a couple questions that have come up in looking at the data that you've sent and in hearing the discussion tonight. You've talked about a project in Lancaster, and that project, if I'm correct, is the North Lancaster LLC projected water use, and I think that's what you're referring to. So first, my question is that what you're referring to?
That is correct.
Okay, then that leads to my next question, which is in looking at this and in looking at the proposed expansion of the water district, it seems to be a very large portion of the community, and I'd like to understand the boundaries of that expansion in relationship to this specific project.
Okay, the actual boundary that was requested by Lancaster was actually much smaller than what's shown on that map. Our attorney expanded it to, he wants specific features to describe the water district. In this particular case, we went to the Nashua River. And the southern part of the district boundary is shown, a majority of that is Lancaster conservation land. So it really was no issues of, because it was expanded district, it was not implying that there would be more usage than having the small one. And also on the going down Route 70 into Lancaster, on the right side of the road, Lancaster only had that as what they were requesting as the water district boundary. And it was, I know I hear a lot of comments from people about Kimball's. Kimball's had nothing tied to any of the board. It was only my opinion to Lancaster, and Kimball's has a new well. That's why they were not interested in any connections to our system. But to me, it was just a common sense thing that if there's a water main going down the road, you want the ability to connect the people on both sides of the road, not have a water main only the people on the right side of the road. To me, that just doesn't make common sense. So that's why we expanded it to include the left side of the road.
Okay.
So it is bigger than it really needs to be.
Okay. I have a number of questions, so I don't know how you want to handle this, Mr. Chairman. But so, to me, that raises a concern because I believe along with the expansion of the water district comes voting rights within the individuals within that district.
Correct.
So those individuals that now are encompassed by this boundary as delineated, if this expansion goes forward, now have voting rights. And therefore, when you talk about a 250,000 gallon per day cap, there could be a shift where individuals within that now district can change that vote. They now have voting rights, and there was talk about intermunicipal agreements that we have with the city of Fitchburg and the city of Leominster. We are customers of the city of Leominster and the city of Fitchburg, and we purchase a service. So the question that brings to me is if this is truly for one specific project that's looking at, by Title V flows, it's 130,750 gallons per day, and we're looking to supply water for one project, why would we not in turn, rather than expanding the district and therefore affording them all of the benefits of being part of the water district, which includes those voting privileges, why would we not have them as a customer and supply a service and have them purchase that service similar to what we do with the city of Leominster and city of Fitchburg?
Richard.
Well, you could do that. I will confess. You could do that. The task that was put to me was to define an area into which the district could expand. It would be necessary for legislative approval to do that. And because districts are essentially a specialized form of a municipal entity, it's important that the boundaries be specific. At times it becomes very important as to whether the boundary's here or there. And so in putting that together, I will confess that I conform the boundaries to fixed locations. That's why, for example, the northerly line of the Nashua River is the southerly boundary of the district and so forth. And then there were discussions back and forth as to what made the most sense, and in the end it became what was voted and what is shown on the plan. But it would be possible to put a a proposal together, which would be a completely different thing, and it would be simply selling water outside the town to some particular taker.
Thank you. My concern is by expanding the district, you're not selling just an entity. You are expanding the district and the voting capacity and the potential for increase. So we talk about 250,000 gallons per day today, and we talk about a cap that exceeds. My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the restrictions within the water district are that you can limit non-essential water use, and you can limit connections, future connections. So for example, if someone were to come forward and you didn't have the capacity, you would not have to allow that connection. However, by expanding the district to this length and to another community, you are now offering all of these properties within that expansion voting capacity to change this decision that may be made today. And that concerns me, because it is outside of the control of the town of Lunenburg. It is now partly in the control of the town of Lancaster. And if, in fact, your goal is to supply water to a specific project with a specific cap, then do that. But don't expand the boundaries of the district.
Well, that is a possible approach to it, but I would suggest to you that although the Lancaster portion that is being proposed to be added to the district looks formidable when one looks at it in isolation, it's dwarfed by the present extent of the district, which is most of the town of Lunenburg. There are 3 corners of the town of Lunenburg that are not part of the district. All of the registered voters in the town of Lunenburg who reside in the district, which is everywhere except those 3 corners, also have voting privileges in the Lunenburg Water District, and we do live in a democratic society, and most of the big decisions do get made by voters coming forward at some point and voting for this or that. So it's always possible that through the democratic process, someone is going to steer the boat in a direction that somebody else doesn't like. But I wouldn't say myself that bringing this relatively small piece of Lancaster into the district would have a really appreciable impact on the overall, voting, what I say, potential or capacity of the Lunenburg Water District as a whole.
No,
But
yep, go ahead.
Could we, that is expanded district. I mean, would the commissioners be any objection to downsizing it a little bit? I mean, because there is the focus of that particular project. My thinking, I was mostly on the money side of where I thought it was the best to expand the district, was we generate a lot of money on the quarterly rates, the minimum charges and everything like that. So we generate a lot of money, consistent money that we can budget. And that was my main focus, was that, we could really increase our revenue with a consistent
You also give up
quarterly.
all the connection fees for fire protection if we do that, and that's also a good source of revenue for
Well, it depends on
maintenance.
how you write the agreement, right?
Yeah, the Lunenburg sewer for Fitchburg and Leominster, they sell us a service, but we have to pay them a connection fee.
Right, it depends on how you structure that agreement. So it's not off the table. Connection fees we pay to both the city of Leominster and the city of Fitchburg.
I think, before we move on, I think you raise a very interesting point, and it's worthy of research and looking at it. And I'm not disagreeing with you, but it's been my experience that a lot of these commercial endeavors the people don't vote. Because they just don't. It's a one entity, the folks that you're shrugging, you don't agree.
No, I know.
Okay, Walmart votes?
No, I think what I'm responding to is the fact that the vote to move forward, as far as we have, was made by 10 people.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and as far as I'm concerned, the democratic process is of great concern, and I think Mrs. Bertram has a very valid point. Do you have another question?
I have quite a few, actually. The next question that I have is, you made reference to the 540,000 gallons per day and the existing water withdrawal permit. The first question that I have is, we did receive a copy of the permit, and I'm not sure if it's the current one. It actually says that it expires February 28th of 2014. Is that the existing permit?
I
is
believe
there a
our permit
subsequent?
expires 2016. I'm not sure.
Perhaps there's an extension, or because
Well,
the
we-
permit that I have a copy of is February 28th of 14, and that was the permit that was, when you were given the permit for the Keating well, and it talks about all of your existing water withdrawal, the expiration date on that permit is February 28th of 2014.
Okay, I know they automatically renew every 5 years, so maybe that particular, we're at the end of that stage of that permit. In my discussion with DEP, they said 2016 was the end of our permit. They were actually hoping, they wanted us to hold off on our increasing of our withdrawal permit for Lancaster until 2016. The board did not want to wait and commit something to Lancaster that we didn't have the approval for right now.
Okay, so that raises my next question, whether it's, the one that's on file is 2014. Perhaps it was automatically, extended, I don't know. But the question that I have is, what has been done to increase that permit? Because if I understand correctly, we're at the limits of our permit currently. Although you have capacity and you've outlined that capacity, I believe you would need to get an increase of your water withdrawal permit.
Exactly.
Okay, and have you started that process, and what is that process? Can you outline what that process is?
Well, the DEP has their 5-year plans. I mean, actually, the withdrawal permits are a 20-year plan, and they all have times for renewal. And Lunenburg's time is in 2016. So we're actually trying to sneak in and do our permit with the other towns. And what it is they come and review the existing conditions, and then they look at the proposed, which I've already passed on all the anticipated projected water use, and they review all this information, and they come up with a number. Lancaster's asking for 250,000. Mass DEP might come back and say, well, we don't come with those. That's 200,000. So it'll be a cooperative sit-down kind of explanation of what we're anticipating and what they actually feel that we need. And then they'll go through the process and redo our withdrawal permit. If they're going to review all the environmental impacts and everything, review all our pump test data, and then they'll decide if we can increase our permit.
And what happens if you exceed that permit?
Fines.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we talk about a cap of 250,000 gallons per day, how do you propose to make that limitation? If in fact the district does get expanded to this large area, which personally I would oppose, versus a customer and a specific project, how would you control limitation of if you exceed that 250,000 gallons per day? I know that there are restrictions, for example, for non-essential water use. You can stop connections. But if you have someone come in, say, and let me just throw out theoretically, a business comes in and they use much more water than originally anticipated, what happens?
Well, everybody's got to realize the 250,000 gallons they're asking for is Title V numbers.
Right,
And they're not going
which
to
is-
come anywhere near those numbers. We reviewed a lot of information. We actually contacted Leominster, reviewed what their hospital uses, which is significantly larger than what is proposed in this project. The hotel, we looked at 180, the one in Leominster, the Doubletree, that's 188 rooms. They proposed 150 rooms. The numbers aren't accurate on the Title V. So, I mean, there is wiggle room here. And on our withdrawal permit, not necessarily for the Lancaster part, our withdrawal permit, there's a 100,000 gallon buffer. If we exceeded, like right now, it's 540. If we did pump 640, then there wouldn't be any violation of any of the laws in violation of our permit. Typically, we've never I think one time we had, I think it was a sewer year when sewer destroys the whole water system. Leaks are incredible. I think that year is probably the only year where we exceeded our withdrawal permit. And
But if you were to put this cap, you've talked about a cap of 250,000 gallons per day to Lancaster. If, all of the homes along the route decided to connect, and if all of the business, this project moved ahead, and they used more than 250,000 gallons per day, is there any recourse?
Well, the main focus here should be the 250,000 would be from Lunenburg. If they found sources of water there that could produce 500,000 gallons a day or something, they would provide it themselves. The 250,000 is from Lunenburg.
Okay.
So I believe highly likely that they are going to find a source of water there that's going to assist us. So the 250,000 is what we committed to, and I believe there's more. There's more water there than.
The other thing I'd like to make sure everybody understands is we are talking conceptually with a 500,000 gallon storage tank. So, I mean, if there was a small amount of increase, then you could take it from the storage tank. I mean, I just can't imagine that on a 250,000 gallon allocation that you're going to increase it twice. But that would be the stopgap, and very frankly, there are ways of shutting off the faucet. You know?
How many years is that 250?
You gotta use the mic. I can't.
How many years is that 250,000 gallons agreement in place for?
Well, we haven't even gotten that far. I mean, we, as I said, this is in the infancy, you know?
Well, I know that December, according to information I got from Mr. McNutt today, he had telephoned me back on April 14th and asked me about my feelings about this project. And he said he'd received a lot of information from Lunenburg Water District, and I asked him to forward it to me, and he said he'd look into it. And of course, I received nothing.
So what did he
And
say
then
today?
Today, he volunteered to send the information to me. And when I was looking through the communication, it looks like December 1st, 2014 was the initial request from Lancaster via email. And you got back to them and said, yep, we're really interested, let's proceed. So December 1st, 2014 is when this was initiated. So I don't think that's very long ago, really. And from that point to this, now the next email I got was 3-3 from Fran to the Lancaster folks, tidying up the agreement and mentioning discussions held over the last couple of meetings. Then there was an email from Lancaster's planning director on March 27th indicating she'd attached the final water district map for the proposed expansion, and she directed you to please use this version for the annual meeting vote at your meeting tomorrow. So at no time from December 1st to this March 27th, did you reach out to anyone in Lunenburg government to let them know that this was going on, to make us aware of it? Then on April 6th, Noreen emailed the district acknowledging that the water district had voted to expand their district into Lancaster as per the attached map. Yes, it was in its infancy, but you already voted to expand the district without very much time to consider the ramifications, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Then she laid out the next step, which was to petition the state legislature for passage of a special act to approve this expansion. She went on to say that the Lunenburg Water District Attorney, Richard Larkin, is working with Senator Flanagan on this submittal. I'll keep you posted. Still, no outreach to Lunenburg or all the very many water district customers in Lunenburg. It seems to me that you rushed to vote for something that you aren't really sure about. You don't know if the rates will get lowered or if they'll raise. You don't know. Once you expand the district, it needs an act of the legislature to expand the district to an abutting town. Right. Once you do that, now Lancaster's in the district, they can expand it to towns that they abut.
What?
According to this, you can expand the district to abutting towns. According to the acts of 1939.
I think the point is if they were, and it sort of goes back to what I was saying, is in the event that the individuals that are now within the district were to attend, it was very small attendance at your annual meeting. If there was another proposal put forward to bring another proposal for another extension, that meeting could in fact vote to extend beyond what you've already accepted and beyond Lancaster, and that is the concern that I have and that I talked about earlier, and I haven't seen a map of the entire district as an entity, but the potential is there. I don't know what the likelihood is, but the potential is there, I think is the point. My question is a follow-up of Mrs. Luck's comments.
Can I just respond real quick to that?
Sure.
I think that's an interesting point, and maybe I'm viewing this thing in a completely different manner than you folks are. At this particular junction, we don't have any agreement, okay? We're talking, and we haven't talked for a long time. These are all good points. Everything's negotiable, and if there's a better way for us to do this, then certainly we'll do it. I mean, we're reasonable people, and you bring up some good points.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The other question that I have is, you've talked a little bit about this is in the infancy, and there's all kinds of work to be done. The question that I have is what? You've talked about the financial aspect, about this not costing the Lunenburg ratepayers any money.
Right.
My concern, as I relayed to you at the meeting prior, is on the environment. The lakes in the community, our existing streams, our existing environment, and our ability to supply our customer. You've talked about the ability to supply our existing customer. You've touched on the Zone 2. One of the questions that I had is what additional studies are being done, what environmental impacts are being done, and the response that I got is that basically you're relying on the pump test of the Keating well as to the zone recharge area. I think that there's a lot of variables that go into that equation. For example, is if you see a tremendous amount of development now in Lancaster, and I don't know what the layout of this project is going to be, nor do I know what other projects may come down the pike. But as land use changes and as impervious area changes, recharge areas change. That's a fact. And the question that I have is, rather than looking at the zone as it exists today and those recharge rates, I think it's vitally important that you look at the recharge rates if and when this proposed expansion happens, and the projected impact that it will have on those recharge. I'm not an engineer, but it concerns me that when we talk about this is in the infancy and there's a lot of work to be done, I'm not sure what work is to be done if you've already made the vote to expand. What additional studies and information is going to be done to ensure that there isn't a negative impact on environment and habitat in Lunenburg and water supply in Lunenburg? Is there going to be any?
Whatever DEP says. I mean, as we stated, they are the guru of water. They're not just going to pass over this very lightly. I'm sure that they're going to study that. I'm sure that all of these issues are going to be brought up, and they're good points. Okay, Fran?
Yeah, on that, I talked to Barbara Kickham, the hydrogeologist who does the well designs in the recharge areas, and that was my specific question to her. If by the increasing of our permit, because of the expansion to Lancaster, is going to cause any environmental impacts, will you terminate this project? And she said, absolutely. She says, I'm the most conservative person you will ever meet. And if it's going to impact anything, I will call it.
And who is this individual? I'm sorry.
Barbara Kickham from Mass DEP.
Okay,
Central
so
Office.
if and when you go to increase your water withdrawal permit, so may they, I guess you guys have done water withdrawal permits in the past. What kind of studies do they typically require? Or do they simply go by the pump test report?
They'll review the pump test report, but they also have there's a new sustainable water management initiative coming out. That's a new regulation coming out in a year. That's going to cause huge impacts to everybody. And one of the main concerns with that one is I went into the big spiel about how we went for the Keating well for 1,000 gallons a minute. The new regulations coming out is if you don't use it, you lose it. So on the Lancaster side of things, if it goes through, it's in our permit, and we're going to have it. But they will not increase our permit with an impact. And there's a lot of studies that they did for whatever they are, fluvial fish. I mean, there's a lot of stuff they review. And a lot of that is very controversial. A lot of people, scientists, hydrogeologists, everybody cannot come up with the actual true calculations that they use to come up with these calculations of the stressed. They don't do stress basins anymore. They do the fluvial fish. I don't even know what it is, but it's a huge thing. And from what I'm told, when I've talked to other towns, they and I talked to them about our looking to expand into Lancaster, and they said you have to. If you don't do it now, you're going to lose it. And this actually happened to us in I believe it was the early 80s. I'm not sure if I was even working here at the time, but we had registered volumes of water that we could pump from the wells. And what they did is they actually reviewed the data. They picked a 3-year period, and they reviewed what you actually pumped from that well, and they terminated your what you were registered for, and gave you a new number based on your average. So, and I think that's what's going to happen here. So even though we're all talking and we have all this water, we can supply Lancaster. When this regulation comes out, if we're not supplying Lancaster, it could impact everything anyway. And most of it's there's mitigation measures. And actually, when I talked to Mass DEP about our expansion and increase of our permit, she says, well, we'll enforce mitigation. And meaning that they're going to have to do special recharge to restore the water, more water than what they actually took. So I think on that side of things, I think it's actually going to be better than what it is currently. Well, the worst thing and I imagine Lunenburg's, the town's going to be hit with this big time too, is you can't have, which affects lakes and rivers, is you're not supposed to have a drainage pipe, a catch basin, where it drains to the brook. That is horrible. You're not supposed. It's supposed to drain into the soils and percolate to the lakes for the whole summer. And what it does, it goes in the brook and it's gone. See ya. It's in the Nashua River. It's gone. Well, it passed through the lakes quickly. So this is going to impact everybody. So in our case, I think this is perfect timing to increase our permit and not have this kick back on us. And this, even no matter which way it happens, it's not going to affect the water available to Lunenburg. Let's say they do this. Let's say nothing happens with Lancaster. They cut our permit to 440,000, which is what we typically use. And if there's any kind of project, let's say a housing project comes with 100 houses, we're going to have to go and increase our withdrawal permit. And to do that, there's going to have to be mitigation to take place. And it might not be in their project. It could be that they have to go fix a particular area of town and recharge water in that area. So it's really a lot of stuff's up in the air. But I think the timing of this is perfect, and the environmental impacts, DEP is going to be on top of it. I've already discussed it with them, and and she's very firm and conservative. So if there are issues, she will make them known.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Ribasol.
3 questions, then I'll make some comments. The pipe going down Leominster Shirley Road and Ford Pond, the standpipe and the valve station, would those be paid for by Lancaster, or would it be the water department debt?
Lancaster would pay for everything.
Okay. Orchard Hill, Orchard Park, the skating rink, D'Ambrosia Eye Care, all of those are in the district. They were currently served by Leominster. Would they then become customers of us?
D'Ambrosia would. The other part is on the other side of Route 2. Our district does not extend on the other side of Route 2, I don't believe.
The map does. The current district does.
But we cannot compete.
The thing what I would say is that
we run against the Leominster border. That's
right. So my concern is that both of those entities, and I'm sure others, are paying a major premium to Leominster, and I'm sure that the water here might be less than. So I'm concerned about, that goes right into the question, is that the amount of water that's going to be needed in the future is a concern for me.
okay.
And I'm going back the 150 years I've lived in town, and I can remember any project going before town meeting would fail unless all the information was there. I believe that this action to go to the legislature is premature, that we need to know what are the future Lunenburg developments and how much water would be needed there, based on a reasonable projection. The economic development in Leominster, what are, based on current zoning and potential zoning, that...
Did you mean Lancaster or Leominster? You said Leominster.
I'm sorry, Lancaster.
Okay.
So the Lancaster economic development possibilities, what actually looking at those numbers, actually coming up with some projection of the cost and revenue projections and the connections. You say you don't know what it is. If I were at town meeting in Lunenburg, we'd vote it down because we didn't have the information. We have a redundant source at Keating's. I'm concerned we're giving that away. I'm going to echo Mrs. Bertram's comments about Lancaster as elected officials. I'll also remember a time when the Lunenburg Water District had a meeting, and there was a second meeting afterwards because people didn't like it. We had to hold it at the Turk Hill Middle School because there was an attempt to raise rates and do some additional costs in a way that was not made public. So I'm concerned with the way things were done. You may not have intended it to, but it certainly was not open government to me. Certainly, all of our meetings by town bylaw are required to be on the town website. They're posted publicly. Things are done televised. I think that your board, since it's in the infancy, since it's unknown, that you should reverse this action until all the information is available. And even then, I do not support water that is a Lunenburg resource going to any other use than Lunenburg.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
That's it.
Mr. Alonso.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of comments. One of them, the project notwithstanding, to me, the project just revealed a problem of not lack of transparency, because there's no, I want to make sure that I'm clear that I don't think the Water District did anything that was not within their purview to do. That's very clear. So I don't think that any rules were broken. I think it's a lack of, for lack of a better word, lack of visibility, lack of advertising meetings, lack of accessibility to meetings beyond going to the meeting itself. And those are all things in my tenure here, not because of my tenure here, but I was part of it, but many other people. We have really worked hard at the town government level to make sure that people had access to every bit of information that they needed for whatever we could. So we've expanded largely the televised meetings. We have a YouTube channel where if you don't even have cable like I don't, you can see the meetings. We have I've gone through 2 iterations of websites. We publish things in several papers, not just the Sentinel and Enterprise, but the Ledger as well. We try to get people involved. We send warrants for the town meeting to get as many people involved as we can. Now, that does not always work, that we get people there, but it's not for lack of effort of getting people there. And this is one of the things that was, I think, revealed in this process, is that when you have an annual town meeting, and I'm a member of the Water District, I'm a customer, I never knew when it was. I never, I'll certainly take responsibility for never making an effort to try to know when it was. But it is kind of a two-way street, at least. And now, with water resources being in the news as they are, and while this district, and it may not be as severe as other places in the country, it certainly is on people's minds, that I think that the water that's within the confines of Lunenburg as a political entity really should be the decision-making process of the entire town at large in any event. Now, expanding, that's my personal feeling, expanding the voting rights to another political area, as was noted by Mrs. Bertram and others, where they have a right to have a vote in something that, in a district that has the ability to, A, raise or lower rates, and B, to tax, according to the article that formed the district. That's a lot of power to go outside of the political spectrum. I mean, that goes out of the political boundaries of the town. I've said this in years past, I will reiterate it again, that I don't understand, I don't understand the history of why districts were made back in 1939. I'm not a political history person. But I would venture the following question, that if there was not a water district today and somebody proposed one, it probably wouldn't be a separate entity. And I think this really should be under the umbrella because of all the reasons stated here. Again, the project notwithstanding, I think the scientists and the hydrogeologists have all their say in the DEP. So again, that would remain the same. But I think the whole umbrella of town government should be really this should be one component of it, very much in the same way that the sewer commission has its own enterprise fund, and it's an elected body that runs their side of things, but people can see in a televised way what's going on. And there's for lack of a better word, one-stop shopping, that if you wanted to find out what was going on in town on any regard, including water, that you could come to one location and find it out. So that is what I think is exposed here. I know that there's a Facebook page now. I applaud the Lunenburg Water District for doing that. I would hope they would take other steps to making their processes more, I don't want to say more open, because I know they are open, but more advertised, so people would know what was at stake, so that people could review warrants that are going to be discussed there, so people had a chance to attend more. But in the end, I still think it should be part of town government, as I did 9 years ago.
I've got a question, if I could, Mr. Chairman, to our council, and I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. What would happen if we, as an entity, said to the good folks in Lancaster, notwithstanding everything else, you don't have any voting rights. This is an agreement for a maximum, as we've talked, 250,000 gallons, et cetera, et cetera. You essentially can't dictate anything else. Is that possible?
Are you referring to something along the lines that Ms. Bertram suggested?
Yeah.
Well, that would be an entirely different kind of an arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
The arrangement that's now being proposed through the vote at the district meeting had to do, as Ms. Bertram suggested, with bringing that portion of Lancaster into the district. The registered voters there would have the right to vote. Entering into an agreement to supply someone with water, whatever it says. So you could tell them, you could stop right now and tell them we're not doing anything, and the repercussions would be there wouldn't be any. If you entered into some kind of a commercial agreement to sell water to some entity with the legal authority to do it, it would be whatever that agreement said. But it would be an entirely different thing, on a completely different footing, than simply reforming the district. And that's really the way the legislature does this as a practical matter in these things. For example, it's been mentioned that there's already a portion that adjoins this Lancaster thing that was added to the Shirley Water District. And that was done, I think, in about 1988. And the way the legislature did it, by that time, the Shirley Water District, which had originally been formed by an act of the legislature in 1903, and it was a small part of Shirley, and somewhere along the line it was expanded through to be the entire town, but still a separate entity. Then in 1988, when this little piece of Lancaster came into it, the legislature effectively repealed the existing Shirley Water District and then put it back in place with the town of Shirley and this piece of Lancaster. That's what would happen, I'm assuming. I don't write the legislation, but I'm assuming that's what would be done here. So that would then create a kind of municipal entity. And this gentleman here was talking about 1939. That legislation only formed the Lunenburg Water District. And in fact, there's a fairly colorful history about the initiative that led to that went back into the early 20s, I think. There was a great deal of public debate. It was carried on in the newspapers. Some of it is very amusing. Some of it is very erudite. And it was voted on a number of times. And finally, in 1939, it succeeded. It went to the legislature. It then came back. And the way the legislature handled that then is they created that 1939 Act, Chapter 17, and they required that it then be accepted again. So it was accepted going in, and then it was accepted coming out, and it was kind of a cart before the horse operation, because they called a meeting, a special meeting, like a town meeting, but a district meeting, of the Lunenburg Water District to see if they would agree to be the Lunenburg Water District. So there was a kind of bootstrap thing about that, then it becomes a municipal entity. And that's what we're talking about now, and it has all kinds of consequences, ramifications. It's a governmental unit. People have rights. On the other hand, you have a customer, you have an agreement, here's what it says. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
I agree with Mr. Alonso that we encourage an open and honest dialogue, and we try to get our citizens involved. And there's quite a few people here that are very interested in this topic, and I'd like to allow a few questions, if that's all right.
Sure. Before that happens, I'd like to kind of take a straw poll here and see how the other members of the Board of Selectmen feel about this. Bob has said, no matter whatever you do, I don't want to do this, right?
That's correct.
Okay. How do the other members of the board?
Because I have a mic already, I'll just say, so it's, as far as extending the water district, regardless of any other situation, I'd be against it. If it was an intermunicipal agreement between the water district and the town of Lancaster, I'd probably be a lot more amenable to it, sure.
Okay, thanks. So.
As would I. My concern is with expanding the district. My other big concern is, you mentioned an analogy of the cart before the horse. In this particular case, my concern is that without having DEP, looking at an increased water withdrawal permit and looking at the potential impacts, I think this is the cart before the horse. I think expanding the district and opening the potential for having to supply water and expanding that voting base is premature. I think you've not talked about all of the studies and mitigation measures that are being put in place. Well, those are being put in place because of the shortage of water in the Commonwealth and around the country. So water is a very precious resource, and we have to understand it's not infinite. So we absolutely have to understand those recharge areas thoroughly. We have to understand the ramifications of exporting water and understand that recharge zone thoroughly before we enter an agreement. Now, in the event that these studies were done and we were able to increase the water withdrawal permit and it was proven scientifically that there would be no adverse impact to entering into an agreement, say for 130,000 gallons per day or whatever that number is that made sense, as a customer versus an expanded water district, I certainly would listen to that and perhaps be amenable to that. But expanding the district, I am absolutely opposed to.
Okay.
Outside of town, I want to be very clear, I also think that there may be areas in Lunenburg that could benefit from an expansion of the district within the confines of the community, and I think we need to look at that before we talk about expanding to other areas.
Like where? Give me an example, if you would.
I'll talk about, and I don't know, because I haven't done any of the research, and I would hope that the Water District would look at that, is you've talked about the recharge of Lake Shirley, and I know many years ago when I was on the Board of Health, and there was drawdown on Lake Shirley, there were wells, numerous wells that went dry during that period, and the majority of homes on Lake Shirley are still served by wells. Is there an interest in Lake Shirley to consider expanding the water district? I don't know, but you're talking about a water supply that is very close to those homes. And have they been approached? Before we go to another community, what has the water district done to determine what the interest is of Lunenburg citizens that are currently within the district to have water? Or to expand the district beyond the confines?
We did have a person, he lived on Flat Hill Road. He was outside of our district, and apparently his well goes dry very frequently, or it's always dry, I'm not sure, but he has some serious water issues. He was going to meet with the Lake Shirley board and discuss a betterment process and see if he could kind of poll people. So it wasn't us that went and tackled it. He kind of took it upon himself to go and investigate this thing, and that's where we're at now. I haven't heard back from him of what anything was found, but it is being looked at.
You know, I think that perhaps if there's a way even to do, I mean, I've done them numerous times in another organization that I'm part of, to do surveys, free surveys on SurveyMonkey. It's not hard to solicit interest, and I know that's something the Sewer Commission actively does, is they actually will go door to door and determine interest in extending sewer. And I know it's been a number of years now since I've worked in the community, but I do know that there were problems in the Lake Shirley area. There were numerous wells in that area that went dry, and this Keating well is within that area.
And
So
do you think that That's because of the Keating well, so-called?
Do I think that it's, no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not, but I think that if there's an aquifer in that area that could potentially alleviate some problems of Lunenburg citizens, then before we expand to another community, let's look at expanding there. Is there an interest? And I don't know the answer to that. But there's also, I would hope that I know economic development is on everyone's mind now, and we've talked about the Village Center District and looking at economic development in Lunenburg. I think there will be an expanded demand in Lunenburg, and I think that opening up that channel and finding out our existing interest in expanding the water district currently that is in Lunenburg makes sense before we talk about going outside, and I would be opposed to going outside, period.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Could I just add something to that?
1 second, please, yes. I just want to kind of expand on what Mrs. Bertram said, and then I'll give you the floor. On the economic development front, I think she makes a very good point that the town has very much made a statement with the village district, and we are very much in the process of trying to develop an economic development plan that will attract both businesses, residents, et cetera, to the downtown, et cetera. But I think what I heard earlier is that, nobody requested it, and I think that we as a town have to be more proactive to list water and all of our resources when we go to address economic development in the community.
I just wanted to add a clarification, and maybe everyone knows this already, but if you've read the 1939 Act, you'll see that there's a section that provides for expansion of the district, and it does not require legislative action. The district itself, through its annual meeting or a special meeting, can cause that to happen, and we've done it many, many times. Within the town, yeah. Very frequently, it's at the behest of people in the neighborhood. Sometimes, for one reason or another, the district has, seen it in everyone's best interest to do that. So that has happened many times, and it doesn't require legislative action.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to add to two areas that I know are of importance as we talk about economic development in town. And one of them, of course, a lot of our commercial area is up Chase Road, which is not currently served. And then in the area that we have a very big project upcoming in the next couple of years on Summer Street, that was an area that I don't believe is in the district, that those areas are being served, some customers are being served by Fitchburg, including Tri-Town. So I think those would be areas that I think the district may be interested in expanding, and they have built-in number of customers there. So, because those are just water, they're not intermunicipal agreements. We just have Fitchburg Water supplying Tri-Town right now.
Right. Richard, could you get into that when we can't compete? Water supplies are monopolies, so we can't run a water line down a street that already has water.
Right, and I don't know, at least I can't come up with it at the moment. I can't tell you what the basis is for the supply in the Baker Station area, but I know, for example, in the late 19th century, there were acts passed which served as the basis for Lunenburg being supplied with water from Leominster, and it's still the case today. I think, up above Graham Street there, what is it, Pleasant View or something, isn't it?
Right, Pleasant View and Piedmont.
So those were all long-standing arrangements that went back into the 19th century, and we, as an entity, can't just simply go in there and say, well, we're here, so we're going to do it. I mean, it could be done, but it wouldn't be a simple thing.
We could do it through a special act of the legislature, similar to what's being done going into Lancaster,
Correct.
with an agreement with Leominster or Fitchburg to take it over and either absorb.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah.
I do want to,
I just wanted to comment about that, Bob, and
I know.
notwithstanding the fact that it could be done, we don't know what kind of condition everything is in, so we don't want to inherit something that is going to be very, very costly for us to do. I accept your point, I understand the point, but, so.
thank you. I do want to give the audience a chance to participate, but first, I'd like to ask Mrs. Luck if she'd like to respond to the question.
I would not be in favor of expanding the district, but I would entertain having Lancaster as a customer.
And I'm just trying to make sure I understand. Under no circumstances do you want anything to happen.
No, that's not correct. What I said was that I would be opposed to expanding the district to the town of Lancaster, to outside of the confines of Lunenburg, and I would like to understand the studies and the water withdrawal permit before I would move forward with Lancaster as a customer, but I would not be opposed to Lancaster as a customer, similar to an enterprise agreement.
And I agree. I think that there's still a lot of data to be reviewed, but I would oppose an expansion of the district, but would consider a customer agreement with Lancaster.
Bob's no and you're yes. Okay, good, thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to spend a brief amount of time inviting anyone who has a clarifying question or would like to be heard, ask you to step to the mic and identify yourself. Your name and your address, please. Please try to be brief, and please try to not kind of repeat what's been said already. Make a new point. Thank you.
Much of this project, being a customer, hinges on the Keating well. My question is that the Keating well, you're permitted to pull out 1.44 million gallons a day. All the other wells combined are 1.7. If the Keating well were to become contaminated, what would be the impact on the rest of the water system?
That's actually a two-part answer. Our goal, which by the expansion of the district, would give us more authority to acquire a new well site in Lancaster. By selling water to them, I can't see, and then it'll all be on Lancaster supplying their own water. But depending if a well site was found in Lancaster and we did expand our district, then that would be used as a source. And also we've been communicating with the city of Fitchburg as a backup source. I've mentioned it a few times now that the Fitchburg, we've been talking before I've even worked here that we should do a connection, and I still believe even if Lancaster fell through that a connection with Fitchburg should be made. So Fitchburg would be an extremely important part of a backup water supply. So two wells, Lancaster, two possible wells in Lancaster and Fitchburg would be the backup if Keating's was down.
My name is Walter Parquette, 10 Iris Court in Lunenburg. I am the president of Hickory Hills Landowners, Inc., and I noticed that there's a number of lake residents present. My question is specific to Fran. The one thing we really haven't mentioned around here is drought. About 4 or 5 years ago, we had a major drought, and I do believe that the Hickory Hills well was put online.
Well, the Hickory Hills well was put on in 1996. That was its first year.
I'm talking specifically when we had the drought in 2010. I believe it was 2010. I live right by it. I'm about 400 feet away from it. And was that well put online at that time?
Okay, yeah, during 2010, that well, we pumped it in July and August.
Yes.
I believe we pumped 7 million gallons in July, and I think it was like 4 million gallons in August. And if you do the studies on the lake, I don't have it in front of me, but I think the lake's like 314 acres total water area.
Pretty close.
If you do the actual calculations, 1 inch of the lake is, I think, 8 or 9 million gallons. It might even be 10 million. 8.6 million gallons. So if we did pump that well in July, and typically July and August is 2 inches of rain. So if we did pump that well and pumped 7 or 8 million gallons out of there, the lake would have dropped 1 inch, and that is on the assumption it did not rain, and that it's a bathtub. There is no recharge, which everybody knows if you drop something, water's going to equalize, so it's going to draw from the recharge area. So
isn't that a very shallow well?
For Lunenburg, it's actually one of our deep ones. It's 49 feet deep.
Under what circumstances would you turn that well on again?
That well being inactive, it would be an emergency situation, and would require the approval of DEP to let it be turned on.
Thank you.
Hi, Anna Lockwood, 91 Main Street. I have a comment and then I have a question regarding the financial aspect. A comment is, we talk about the environmental cost of this plan and that the water is coming from Lancaster. And, I have a hard time accepting science as it is now because there are certain things that we don't know. We just simply don't know. So as regarding the sewer, we've seen, I have a pond behind my house, and Mrs. Jean Larkin says, I don't know what has happened in the past decade. The pond is turning, into muck. And we still have water, but and there's no one, I don't have a way to prove, but I think there's less water recharging and washing that pond out. So I think it's just, a drop of water, and if we had more water, we'd probably be washing more. But that's my, uneducated guess about what's happening with water. Regarding the financial part of it, you, Mr. Rogers, mentioned that we need to redo our infrastructure, the one that we currently serve. And Lancaster money will help pay for that. So there's two things with that I see to be a problem. The first one is, who will pay Lancaster when we need to redo that system? It might be 30 years from now, but are we going to then have to get new customers? It's almost like taking from Peter to pay Paul. And I don't see that to be a very financially sound way of managing, capital investment. And the other thing is, I know that, the water district is not for profit, but shouldn't we always be planning on, capital improvements? And, maybe we are not charging enough for water, and maybe we should be planning. So it goes to an overall, how we're managing the system. I think we should not be running this deficit that we're not planning for capital improvements. And we should not be counting on expanding the district, getting new customers to then service the previous customers. So if that's the only financial argument, I don't see that to be a sound financial argument to expand the system so that we can have money to, redo our system here. Sure. So, thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to respond very quickly, and then I'm going to turn it over to Fran. I don't want anybody to think that the only financial benefit out of this proposal is to take care of infrastructure in Lunenburg. That's not it. There's a whole host of different things. And I mentioned them, not the least of which is to see if we couldn't reduce the cost to the rate payers and to improve our system here in Lunenburg. But Fran will give you a couple examples of what we have done. We're just not sitting idly. We have done some capital improvements, and I'll let him talk about those.
Okay, well, I'm sure all of you have seen us on the same street several times a year. At a certain point, it costs so much to do the repairs that it exceeds the cost of actually replacing the line. For instance, Whalum Road. Whalum Road, we were there 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year. We were totally destroying the road. I wouldn't say you can point strictly at the water system. I think the sewer system installation had a good effect on that.
A bad effect.
Yeah, a bad effect. And in the water district, customers pay for that. But there are a lot of other streets that need improvements. Maple Parkway, White Street, Mass Ave. I mean, we're always on Mass Ave.
Mackey's.
Yep, Mackey's on 2A. That's an old cast iron line that needs to be replacement. On the financial side of things, we investigated all the surrounding towns, and out of all the towns around us, Lunenburg is the highest. We have an extreme difficulty of collecting the water bills. 5 to 10 years ago, we used to send out 200 to 250 late bills. When people didn't pay the bill, we'd send out notices with interest and demand charges. Now we're up to almost 500 per quarter. So it's extremely difficult to collect the bills.
Tell them what we're going to do.
Okay, so one of the ideas we're looking at is increasing our billing cycle. Currently, we bill quarterly, so we're looking at the possibility of going every 2 months or even monthly. I'm kind of thinking that probably due to the cost of how much it takes to actually do the bills, we might do every 2 months. But so on the financial side, so to do the infrastructure improvements, I don't think we can increase our rates higher than what they are and generate and collect the revenue that we need. So we're in a tough spot, and that's why Lancaster, we were kind of looking at I thought it was a great idea that we could, generate revenue. Typical, when they say a water system, it's, the anticipated time frame is 100 years. It's supposed to last. All the new pipes, that is. The old pipes, I wish that was the case.
Dave McDonald, Island Road, and also a member of the Building Reuse Committee. A couple of things. One is, as far as the economic growth in town, Mr. Rogers, you've attended a couple of the meetings and heard our meetings, which I appreciate. But if you look at what the economic growth is, just 2 years from now, we have 400 houses on the planning board record now with condos throughout the town. We are looking to expand the business district downtown. We're looking to expand the area in Chase Road. To the end of me, I have no idea why you guys don't look at that expanding. I don't understand how you work, and I'm kind of appalled that you guys aren't out trying to actively get customers in this town. Keep the water in this town. I want to thank everyone who came here tonight. Lunenburg has 25% of lakes. We're concerned. I think we have a right to be. And I'm really concerned the way we heard about it. To hear about it in a paper was awful. It should have been a meeting. So I don't understand why we had to hear about it on the Sentinel, and then Mr. Rogers listening to you here defending yourself. I don't know why you didn't come here at the perfect meeting and talk to the board of directors, board of selectmen, let them know what your plans are so we would know. So I'm appalled at that. The last thing I just want to say is we're concerned on Hickory Hills as well. We lived that drought, Franny. You and I talked about it, and if you remember, you told me the sluice gate was broken, and that's why we're losing the water. Well, everybody here in Hickory Hills saw what happened when that well went online. And it went online for 2 months because your heating well was down. Is that correct?
No, Keating Well wasn't online.
Wasn't a Keating
And
well.
how much did the Hickory Hills Lake drop? Was it down like several feet? 2 feet, probably?
It dropped quite a bit.
So what I just explained, we pumped it.
Now,
We
I'm
just
not going to
pumped.
argue here with you either. It was down.
Okay,
And-
which wasn't tied to the well.
So you say. So I think what Ms. Bertram was saying in his board is I'd like to see some evidence as far as exactly what would happen with the water in town. It's a precious commodity. And as you just stated a little while ago, 20 years from now, you don't know what it's going to be. Lunenburg right now has 10,400 residents. I'm hoping within the next 15 years it goes up to 15,000. And if we don't have the water, that's not going to be helping us either. So those are my concerns, and that's why I'm glad people came here tonight. The last thing is again, I don't understand how the water department works, but I know I'm a member, but I never got any information about your financials. Where does the fees go? How it's paid? Who gets paid? Do the commissioners get paid? I have no clue. So the Board of Selectmen, I would recommend that we change that and try to get it under the board's ruling, just like every other committee in town. Every other committee in town. You can post your meetings right up here at the City Hall. The Sewer Commission does. We post our meetings right here.
We are.
We meet, you post them here?
They're here.
Well, then I'm just telling you, people, you have to get out there, get the word.
Gotta look. You just gotta look.
All right.
They're there.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chairman, Dave, I'm sorry that you're appalled, because I don't want anybody to be appalled. And as I said, I'm going to take full and absolute responsibility if there was something that was wrong, because I am the chairman, okay? I'd be less than candid with you if I didn't tell you. I understand that we have to make some changes and do some things. I disagree vehemently about the possibility of the water district coming under the umbrella of the town of Lunenburg. I think that with some changes and redirection and some more communication, we can accomplish a great deal. And I really believe that being an autonomous group and board is a good thing. But in terms of Route 13, Chase Road, Dave said that he doesn't understand why we don't do something. Well, nobody has come to us, and we're not going to go out there and put water pipes in the ground if there hasn't been a request. And basically, if there are requests, we would do it on a betterment basis. We don't have the financial wherewithal to just arbitrarily put stuff down there, so that nobody has come to us to ask for that. with regard to the center of town, we are already serve the center of town. So we are in the water business. So if somebody needs water or wants water, all they have to do is come to us and talk to us, you know? So.
Mr. Chairman, could I make another point that, again, maybe everyone's aware, but I just want to be sure, and Fran, ticked it off in my head, and that's that quite a bit of the resistance to what the Water District was planning to do seemed to be based on sending Lunenburg water to Lancaster. But in fact, and ironically, if this were to happen, what it seemed like might happen instead, it would be a question of Lancaster water going to Lunenburg, because, as Fran suggested, if this area of Lancaster, which he tells me feasibly cannot be served by the town of Lancaster for, geographical reasons, you could say, if it became part of the Lunenburg Water District, all of the water underneath the ground within the confines of that boundary, the principal proprietor of that water would be the Lunenburg Water District, and wells that were found there would serve the district, and you could send the water in the other direction. So it seems to me more likely that Lancaster would be sending water to Lunenburg than the reverse.
I can't speak that loud. Carl Luck, 50 Sunset Lane, and I'm not in the water district, just for full disclosure. We keep getting mixed messages. This one I just heard is, on the one hand, we have more water than we could possibly use. On the other hand, we need Lancaster's water. Maybe we can get that, and I don't know why Lancaster can't use that water. But I have a few. I'm glad you brought the legal, because I have a couple of questions for him. If we proceed and there's a water district formed, can the district restrict the capacity into Lancaster? Is that possible, to restrict to 250,000 gallons? I mean, that's one of the key points I keep hearing, but I don't know if that can legally be done.
Are you talking about if Lancaster became, that section of Lancaster became part of the district?
Yes.
And then there was a call for water?
Yes.
Well, they could, only in the same way that any taker in the district could put demands on the water district system. The district's been in place for 76 years now, and they're constantly trying to keep abreast of potential demands and so forth. And ultimately, those questions are driven by voters, because the voters put the commissioners in their seats and so forth. And in fact, the district now is discussing dealing with its own rules and regulations in such a way that they're in more control and command of exactly what requirements they can place on people who are looking for water. That's a constant and ongoing process. It's not a simple matter of saying, well, we don't want to sell you the water, but the district is ultimately in control of its own business.
So what I'm hearing is they have no more or less rights than any other one in the district.
That would be
right,
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, the second question, which I think should follow, but can you charge a different rate for people in Lancaster, the Lancaster part of the district and the Lunenburg part of the district?
Well, not as we're sitting here now, but there are all kinds of ways that rates can be approached. I mean, that's a vast question on its own.
But residential, can you charge two different residential rates based on which town you live in if it's all one district?
Just on that basis, I would say not.
Okay. And commercial, I would assume, would be the same. Commercial rates would have to be same across the district.
Based on the situation in place now, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. I thought so. I mean, they're all in the district, so they all have the same rights to everything. I don't understand, because if you're going to charge the same rates, a big part of the argument for expanding the district is it's a good business, is that it'll help financially. And I don't understand how it helps financially. I've seen no business model or anything that says how that is financially going to help the people in Lunenburg if you have to charge the same rates and have the same, there's going to be maintenance costs. Even if they pay for the initial infrastructure, there's still operation and maintenance and so forth. So I'm not seeing how other than maybe a little bit of overhead absorption, expanding the district is going to be, it makes financial sense. Unless you do, as Paula said, like Fitchburg and Leominster do to us, and simply sell us services, then they can charge us any darn rate they want, and they make a lot of money off of us. And if that's really the goal of the water district, then they should certainly be looking at selling the water at a premium that will benefit Lunenburg, assuming there's capacity. And you can control it, you can charge what you want. So I guess I would ask through you, Mr. Chair, the district was that discussed at all with Lancaster? Was that even thought of, or is this a new idea? To actually sell water, to have an intermunicipal agreement like we have on sewer and with Lunenburg and
I'm going to defer to Fran, to be honest with you. I'm getting old and decrepit.
All right. Yeah, that came up in the initial discussions, and it was being pushed more so that the town of Lancaster wasn't going to be involved with it. They wanted that development to become their own little water district. So we'd be selling water to another water district, and it just the organization of that, the time frame of doing the legislature would probably take the same amount of time it would take us to do it. I'm not sure. It just seemed like the easiest thing to do was for just the expansion of the district.
So it never did come before the commissioners and get discussed at the commissioner meetings?
Yeah, it did. It did come up, and it was discussed that they would need a district. They would need to form their own district, and that kind of just pushed it aside, where it was just thought that the best idea would be us just to expand our district. So it was discussed, but it wasn't discussed in any kind of full detail.
Okay. So I'll make one comment. As I'm also chairman of the Sewer Commission, and on behalf of the commissioners who work so hard, I appreciate all the good stuff that was said tonight. But I can tell you things are very different now than they were in 1939 when this whole thing got put in place. And I think people would acknowledge that the way the town runs the enterprise fund and the sewer commission works pretty darn well and serves the people very well. So I think hanging on to the 1939 mode of operation is not necessarily, the way of the future here. And I also do want to say, on behalf of someone who couldn't make it tonight, because we talk a lot about serving Lunenburg people first, is there are people in the Lunenburg Water District, and I know you know quite well, on Pleasant View Ave, that have a very serious water problem that's not getting serviced. They have pipes from Leominster, so they fall into that category where there would have to be some agreement with Leominster. But I can pretty well assure you that Leominster would be happy to relinquish their rights to that street because they have no intention of servicing those people. They have come to the Water District, have been just today basically sent away saying, no can do. So I have a difficult time with extending the water district when we're not fully servicing our own people and working hard to do that, and not just offhand saying no, not interested, can't do it, because for sure you can do it. You discussed tonight that you could support Pleasant View Ave and you could help those people out. So I question where the focus should be. I think it should be on Lunenburg first.
Can I question Can I question when you mentioned the sewer enterprise system? Mm-hmm. I believe it was a month ago you asked us to do the billing for the sewer, and it was probably a year ago that Dave McDonald was asking us to take over the operation of the sewer. So if that's the case where it's running so perfectly, why you guys keep coming to us?
Well, because as the last speaker said, we're always looking for ways to reduce cost, and the water department spends out bills to every single person we do. We get our data from the water department to send out to those people. So it's insanity that two town groups spend extra money for billing. So that is why we did it, and unfortunately, there was no interest by the water district because we would have paid. There was an income stream for doing very little more work. But I understand you want to keep them separate, and we're okay with that. We'll find another way. But the interest was to reduce our costs. I would like to just...
I want to try to get to some other people, Carl.
Okay, but just because I want to just inform them that they're... I don't know if this is the right process. I'm not even on the thing, but just so you know that there is a... I'll call it a petition, but it's a invocation of the rights of the members of the district to call a special meeting. And this paperwork, there's 48 people have signed. 10 minimum are required to request a special meeting. And 48 people have signed this to request a special meeting. If I find my glasses, I'll the keywords and then I'll sit down. To call a meeting of the Lunenburg Water District for a reconsideration of the March 28th, 2015 vote to extend the water district into Lancaster. And I said there's 10 required and there's 48 signatures here, and you'll be getting this, and hopefully you'll be scheduling that meeting soon.
I'm just going to go through the people that are currently online and ask you to be brief, but thank you.
I hate microphones, so I'll be brief. My name is Sarah Kammer. I live at 304 Lancaster Ave, and I haven't been a water commissioner for 40 years. I'm young for that. But I have spent 15 years pursuing research in hydrology and geology. I've been pursuing research in hydrology and geology for over 15 years. This will be my 16th. And I wanted to mention that the Sustainable Water Management Initiative is based on data from the USGS that the Mass Department of DEP has looked through thoroughly and tried to come up with ways that allow the state of Massachusetts to conform with EPA requirements for monitoring water supplies and trying to balance everybody's needs. That is what the purpose of those sustainable water management initiatives are. Now, I know the effort here is to push additional capacity through before those regulations come into effect in 2016. And I understand that. But to say that it's not supported by scientists is, I think it's a little bit of a mischaracterization. It depends on which scientist you're asking and what interest they're serving. The other thing I was going to say is my opposition to this at present date is based on those Sustainable Water Management Initiative maps that I've sent to both the Board of Selectmen and to Fran, outlining the regions of Lunenburg that in 2000 and 2004 were documented as having severe impacts of groundwater depletion. They do measure that based on fish counts and what's happening to fish, but that's an indicator group. It's not the only thing that measures. However, I was running the numbers, and it sounds like we did not, as a Lunenburg Water District, get the Keating well until well after those numbers were run. And if, as you say, that Keating well was running at a much higher capacity in 2000 and 2004, those maps from the Sustainable Water Management Initiative may be estimating the groundwater depletion too high for what we presently have and what this expansion might do. I don't know, because those numbers haven't been provided, and as you say, this is really in its infancy. However, I would have liked the opportunity to hear that information before this was voted on by the commissioners, and I hope that, if this special meeting goes forward, you'll look at some of that information and really consider it, because I think we have an opportunity in Lunenburg with all of the lakes that we have, the groundwater that we have, to really be good stewards of the land that we love here. And that's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Better drop the ball. Thank you. Hello, my name's John Rabbit, 314 Townsend Harbor Road. I'm also Vice Chairman of the Conservation Commission. I'd like to make it very clear that I'm not speaking for the Conservation Commission, as we've not yet had the ability to meet on this particular issue. Fran, you and I have been talking to the same people. And essentially, I did have a chance to speak with Andrea Lamarice, yes, as well as Marielle Stone. She's the Deputy Regional Director. She is confirming that essentially our permit is under review and will be coming up within 2 years. So that's their intent. Their intent is to do a full review. And that got us into all sorts of conversations with regard to what does a review really entail. One of the pieces was, well, yes, we do pump it for about 15 days or so, pump the living daylights out of it. Then you'll do a PZO test and to see, is there still water hanging around? Part of the test fails to identify where did this water come from? What happened to the adjoining environments? What happened to the other wells outside of the zones of testing? It's our intent, when these hearings do come up, we're going to press those issues. We want to understand what is happening to our environment. Clearly, I appreciate the fact that the Hickory Hills well came offline. There was a problem with manganese, and from what I understand, it did exceed the new requirements that were published last fall. So one of my questions to you is it your intent to decommission that well?
I'd be happy to take that, sure. I'm going to have to tell you that it's something that the Board of Commissioners has not talked about.
Okay.
I'll tell you what my personal feeling is, that I would like to see that well commissioned, provided that it meets all of the standards that are required, because we did put a lot of money into that well, and as long as it can pump adequately and without causing any harm to anybody else, and make it a sustainable well, and meet all of the guidelines of the DEP, I would be in favor of it, yes.
Okay, so you will share those details with us when you decide to recommission or fire the well up. I'm not necessarily worried about my staining of my clothes or my toilet turning brown or the sink. There are real health issues. And what we've discovered in other areas that the town has sometimes failed to monitor it really well. And we're particularly interested, if you do turn it back on, how are you going to monitor it, and will you assure it? The other question that I had...
Those are all good questions, by the way.
Thank you.
And I'm sure that your wife helped you.
Oh, she did. She wants to know about Houghton Mills, but that's another thing. Okay, the next piece of it was, you alluded to this, essentially the Keating well. Essentially, they'd pump a ton of water.
You alluded to it?
You spoke to it. Okay. And in this case, it's a closed system. They were pumping the water right back in. They were doing a recharge, right? So it's kind of turning. They weren't pumping that.
Not really. No, they were pumping from the well. They pump discharge in a different aquifer than where.
Okay, so it was going back someplace in the ground.
It was discharged downstream from it.
So I guess my question is, what are we going to do when we do these hearings to assure that the people who are doing the tests are in fact a little bit separated from the people who are actually drilling? From what I understand, the hydrologist who did the test were the same folks that did the drilling? No, they were different? So they're registered and certified to some sort of a laboratory that would meet some sort of a reasonable proof?
Stantec Engineering is who we hired to do the test.
Okay.
Dennis Marr laid out the pump test equipment. We actually used the Keating Company's well, the existing equipment, to do the test.
Okay.
The hydrogeologist worked for Stantec.
So
he didn't do the pump design.
He didn't do the testing of
He just took the data and.
Will you do additional testing on that?
Would we do additional?
Yeah.
When
you're going for your permits, will you be doing a whole nother round of retests, or will you submit the old paperwork?
What goes on with when we were issued our permit for that well, we were required to do monitoring of the water levels every summer from May to September 30th. So we actually...
So you're just monitoring the wells, that's permeability of soil.
No, even in the wetlands. We monitor water levels in the wetlands. We have what are they called? PZO meters?
PZO meters? Yeah, okay, tell you what, can you just share that with us in terms of your testing routines and how the state is doing? And could you bring it to the Conservation Commission to allow us to take a look at it? Even though we acknowledge that the state owns the water, nobody owns it, but we're an extension of the DEP. We're interested in participating in what kind of testing you are doing and its effect on our wetlands. So if I could, I'd ask you that you bring us into the conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Jack, we have a meeting schedule. Anybody's more than welcome to come to one of our meetings and ask the questions that you're asking.
Yeah.
And get the data.
Yeah, we just found out.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But we're starting to
We
run
just
around
found
all
out.
sorts of meetings, and we have a schedule ourselves.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of the data and stuff in our offices. So if, you know, we would encourage you to come to our meetings if you have a request. As we would come to a Board of Selectmen
yeah.
meeting or a conservation meeting if I had a request for a conservation issue.
Yeah, the way our bylaws are written right now, if you were to read it a certain way, you would be coming to us. But in this case, because it goes to a higher authority, what we're asking is that we be participants in it.
Jack, I want to tell you that as the current chairman, okay, we are not going to get into territorial disputes. If you want this information, just kindly tell us what it is, and I will see that you get it.
Thank you.
I'll deliver it to you.
Come to my house, go out on the boat, watch the water go down.
Not a problem. Great ship, that Titanic.
Okay. Hey, thank you, Dave.
How we miss
appreciate
him.
it. But we don't want to be left out. It would have been such an easy thing to just put it on the water bill and say, guess what? And it didn't happen. So, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Elaine DeSalle. I live at 18 Goodrich Street in Lunenburg. I just want to remind, everyone knows that the girl that spoke before knows that water is the new oil. I mean, God's not making any more water. All the water that's in the world is here. But we've got to be careful of it. We've got to be good stewards of it. And as much as I like Lancaster, maybe about 5 years ago, Lancaster was trying to get Sterling to help them because they wanted to use some of Sterling's water. So Lancaster may have a problem, but we don't right now, and I think we shouldn't try to create one. But Mr. Rogers, when you did the newspaper article that was in the Sentinel, it quoted you as saying that your board had decided it and it was done and nothing was going to change it, which made a lot of people, I said, well, I'm going to go, and people said, well, you're not going to be able to change it. That's what he said. So maybe when you do declare another meeting, you should be a little more friendly, and people might come.
Hugs and kisses from Dave.
Hi, good evening. Carl Strathmeyer, 39 Valley Road, and I see I'm the last person standing between all of us and going home, so I'll be brief. A governance question for Attorney Larkin, please. We just heard about, well, that's the way it's going to be, it's not going to change. We also heard from Mr. Luck here that there is a call for a special meeting that circulated, appears to have the correct number of signatures, according to Mr. Luck's understanding of how we call a special meeting. So, Attorney Larkin, could you please clarify for us what's the correct procedural method for the voters of the district to have a say in what the commissioners do?
Well, it is the case, and this is the apparently ill-famed 1939 Act. There is a procedure by which, the commissioners can be asked to schedule a special district meeting, and if those procedures are followed, they would do so.
Okay, and one final quick question. Could you tell us how that call for a special meeting should be served on the commissioners or whoever else it should be served on?
At this moment? No.
How do the people holding the petition...
You would submit the request. There's a procedure involving validating the signatures as those of registered voters and so forth. The town clerk could assist you with that because the town clerk is the one who is in charge of that. And
so we don't hold all these people here. How can the commission and you as council work it out with the people holding the call for the meeting, physically holding it right now? How can we work out the proper procedure to go about this?
You're looking for advice on how to go about organizing a petition to schedule a district meeting?
No, they already have the petition.
The petition is alleged to exist. Now what?
Who do they submit it to?
Can they just give it to you tonight?
No, you can't give it to us tonight, but if you would give me some means of communicating with you, I would provide you with the procedure.
Mr. Luck, do you volunteer? No?
Behind you.
Mr. Chair, if I
I'll
may-
volunteer.
Yes, hold on.
Troy Daniels, 94 Main Street.
Excuse me.
If I might follow up on this, I just want to be clear in my reading of the act that the submittal of the petition requests doesn't demand, I mean, it's not a shall. It's still up to the commissioners to call the meeting, is that correct?
Yeah, there's that. There's also this. This is a factor that always comes up when you're dealing with districts. Many districts are formed by special acts of the legislature, such as ours. There are also statutes that are a part of the general laws of Massachusetts, which deal with districts, and it's always a question as to what trumps what and how do you blend the special act requirements with the general laws requirements. And the reason I'm suggesting to the gentleman that he communicate with me is I don't want to just throw this off the top of my head here at this meeting. I would want to look at the statutes in both areas and provide good information.
So, and I'm assuming by you're asking that, and I think it's certainly reasonable, that there aren't many requests for special meetings.
No, it's not common. I've been doing municipal law for more than 40 years now, both for the district here and for towns. And if I can think of a case where a meeting was called by popular demand, it's not coming to me now, so it's not a common thing.
Mm-hmm. May I? Mr. Chair?
Please, make it brief.
Okay. I believe the Act of 1939 also states that if the meeting is not scheduled within a reasonable period of time, if 25 signatures are gathered, that the Justice of the Peace can call a meeting.
Yep.
I'm a justice of the peace.
Mr. Chairman, can I
Yes.
speak briefly?
Please.
Sorry. You know, one thing I want to mention, and I think I think, you guys are taking all the heat on this. I do understand the value of having Lancaster, that area of Lancaster, being developed for business and even residential. Lunenburg, even with the village district by law and everything, we're not going to become an oasis of business. It's usually a region that needs to develop in order to make our business strong. So that is a value to that. To bringing economic development to Lancaster. I just don't know if that trumps everything else. But what you're saying, it is valid, and it is valid for Lunenburg. We are not going to, all of a sudden, have all the industries of the world, we won't. We need to have strong communities, and strong communities sometimes passes, our own borders. So I do see the value, and I just want to say that because you guys have been, taking all kinds of questions and not, so I see the value economically for Lunenburg, for Lancaster to also be strong.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Alonso.
If I may just take this opportunity to thank the commissioners and their attorney and the superintendent for coming tonight. I know there's been a lot of discussion tonight and then behind the scenes leading up to tonight, so I appreciate you coming and meeting with us at our location so we can televise it. And
Sure.
I want to thank everybody who showed up to show that there are people listening and watching out there, and that the big message for me always is that people, especially in groups, can have a voice. So I think it's great forum for everybody to be able to express their opinions, ask questions. So thank you for that. And off the record, and not for this meeting, but something to think about, I'd love to know your opinion about something you mentioned, that you would be vehemently, I think that was the exact word you used, vehemently against joining the town, and that there's a lot of good in keeping it autonomous. I'd love to, at some point, not tonight, hear what your reasoning is for that. I think it would be very helpful to me.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to say, Mr. Chairman, I don't want anybody to get the impression that you will get pushback from the commissioners in terms of calling a meeting, and we're not going to have Bob come out as a JP, and because I'd pay to see him in the robe.
It goes so many ways with that one.
Yeah, I know. But the point is that when people indicate what they want to do, you won't get any pushback from us. We'll be happy to do that, and we'll do it in a timely fashion. Okay?
I would also like to thank the Water District and the Commissioners for agreeing to be here, and I'd like to thank the public for coming to our meeting this evening. I think this just kind of underscores the fact that the more we are open and transparent with the stakeholders, whether they be water district customers or residents of Lunenburg or businesses or potential businesses, the better it is for all of us. The time is late. I'd like to move back and finish our agenda. Are there any parting final comments from the board or the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I also would thank the water commissioners and Fran for the conversation tonight. I thought that was illuminating. As opposed to a straw vote, I would like to make a motion that this board go on record to opposing the expansion of the Lunenburg Water District as a district into Lancaster.
Second.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion among the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, thank you. We've gone on record, but we do appreciate you joining us. I thank everybody who came for this, and I'm going to ask you to indulge us for just a few minutes while we regroup up onto the stage and finish the Board of Selectmen meeting.
Can we finish our meeting here?
Sure.
No, I'm just kidding you.
Get order in, too.
Yeah, right, good. Tom, can I have your credit card?
Committee reports. I would accept a motion to adjourn if I can get one.
I would move that we adjourn.
Well,
That's good.
the town manager wants to report.
Excuse me?
We're all done.
I would move
Okay.
we adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
I just want to mention we do not have a meeting next week. It's the last Tuesday of the month.
Memorial Day one more time.
Right. We will meet next on June 2nd. And one more time, I want to mention that there's a Memorial Day program at the Memorial Park across from the Senior Center on Monday, Memorial Day, at 11 a.m.
Mr. Chairman, before I actually make my motion, I would like to echo what was sort of done, but to thanks to Tom and Paula for their service as chair and vice chair. They haven't gone anywhere. They actually will be able to be more involved during the meeting, not have to run it, but thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I echo that, and thank you very much. So, the motion is seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Good night, everybody. Thank you.
I did want to
So this is the,
ask about that.
this is the